My man, Brian, welcome to the MindShift podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing fine, Darrell. Thank you for having me, and happy Memorial Day.
Same to you, man. Same to you, man. How you hanging out through the end of these COVID restrictions? How you hanging out?
Actually, for me, it's been super busy. A lot of people have been able to be at home, and I've been able to talk to them with what I do professionally, helping them figure it out what's going to be the next journey and next path moving forward. So I've been on the phone nonstop for several months, and it's been actually really, really busy, which is good. But also being able to try to shut it down at a certain time. It's like, okay, when do I stop? When do I stop? But it's been
Yeah.
okay. The only problem is I just couldn't go out and get a real good meal. That's all takeout. So it's like,
Uh,
so
and you and I both like a good meal. I know that much.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It probably didn't stop your cigar problem though.
No,
Like you
no,
didn't
that's not
mess up your
that.
cigar jam, right?
That's the cigar is not a problem. It's a blessing, and it's a wonderful,
There
a
you
wonderful
go. There you go.
opportunity to relax.
Maybe we'll talk about that. You got two passions I want you to share with our audience when we get there. But Brian, why don't you take us a little and give us a backstory on Brian Pearson?
Fantastic. Brian Pearson is a graduate, former athlete from University of Connecticut on the track team, and the graduate of North Carolina when I transferred to North Carolina A&T State University, Greensboro, North Carolina, Aggie Pride. Was able to go and take my business degree and move to the West Coast and started off in commercial floor covering as a territory manager with Pat Craft Commercial Carpet, and I realized that that is not the life for me. Being on the freeway in Los Angeles for hours on end, trying to carry these heavy bags of commercial floor covering up flights of stairs and in a suit when it's 100 and something degrees is not fun. That led to my first opportunity in franchising with the company called Millicare Environmental Services, where I was a franchise business consultant for the Western U.S. That opened my eyes to the world of franchising and let me see just how big and broad the industry is. If you did not know, it's a several trillion-dollar industry, so it probably represents nearly 1/3 of the U.S. domestic product. So it's a huge industry in multiple facets. From there, was able to get into franchise sales from operations from franchise sales and development with Ascendant Corporation and the Jackson Hewitt Financial Services Division. Learned a lot about acquisitions of independents, conversions of independents into a franchise chain, and then selling the franchises and awarding them too. It was a wonderful learning experience of a high pressure cooking type of situation. Moved from California to the SEC territory, Tennessee, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, and did very well, did President's Club, and then they moved me back to LA and covered the Western US again with the brand. So it was a great learning experience, but a year at Ascendant is like a dog year, literally. They work you till they can't work you
Wow.
any longer. Yeah, high pressure, Monday calls yelling at you, Friday calls yelling at you. So
Wow. Wow.
learned a lot. And
Of course.
that being said, I made President's Club several years, and my time had come to an end, and decided to do something totally different and got into casual dining, and the casual dining chain of Boston Pizza Restaurant and Sports Bar based out of Canada. I learned the construction component, the real estate component, which is a huge piece of the business, and the opportunity to really a deep dive into that aspect of franchising into food business, which recognizes as a franchise opportunity. It was a fantastic learning experience. I learned from one of the industry, a gentleman by the name of Jim Tree Living, who's the owner of Boston Pizza out of Canada, and great mentor, and learned a lot. And then I realized after doing all these deals, I was like, you know what, I'm making everybody else money. I want to start making some for my own.
Mm.
And once you get bit by the entrepreneurial bug, it really starts to really manifest, and you really start to factor in what makes sense to you. Do you want to own your own business? Because there's nothing like owning your own business. I'm sure you can understand this.
Preach.
If you're gonna
Tell
work,
them something.
if you're gonna work that hard, you be the boss.
That's
You're gonna
right.
work
That's
that hard.
right.
Absolutely.
Amen. Can we get an amen on a Memorial
Amen
Day?
on that one. Amen on that.
I
So
love it.
that being said, I was able to go to this franchise show called the Restaurant Finance and Development Multi-Unit Show, and I played around the golf with a gentleman by the name of Ron Lewandowski, who was the executive VP of franchise for Checkers and Rally's Drive-In Restaurant, and that was my first client that I helped them grow their brand because they couldn't afford to bring another person on salary. But I said, I don't want to be another salary. I've got a great job. It's like, well, would you consider brokering? I'm like, I'd never thought of that I
Mm.
could do that though. So they showed me the brand, and The Boston Pizza model was roughly about $2 million full in, at least, to get everything up and running, where this one was about $250,000. Big difference, give or take. If you don't own, if you don't own the dirt. So it opened up the floodgates of people that I could actually talk to that qualified. And that was my first experience. I was able to negotiate a contract through my sister, who, is an attorney, and had the pleasure of having her review the documents, and some other friends, and it was a wonderful experience. And that started the whole catalyst. That was my first business, and created my first LLC, and I was off to the races in 2007. And then, unfortunately, 2008 happened.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And that's a perfect segue. Exactly. That's a perfect segue to part of the show, which is that life of breakdown to breakthrough, right? So,
absolutely.
So you collapse both sides of this show, which is inspiration to realization and breakdown to breakthrough within the first year.
Exactly. It's like, wow. This is crazy.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you unpacked a lot there, man. So, you talked about a couple of key things that I like to think about when we're talking to entrepreneurs and leaders. And you talked about early mentorship. You talked about your sales career, your sales journey. Having been a salesperson myself, growing up in a world of meeting numbers and quotas, and you worked in an organization where you said they were yelling at you on Monday and yelling at you at Friday. But those are parts of the journey, right? Those are part of the journey. And what's interesting about that, you can weigh in on this if you can, is if you didn't have those years where they were yelling on Monday and yelling on Friday, I look at those years, because I had a early sales career or sales job where it was the same type of thing, except it wasn't quite yelling, but there were massive quotas, deadlines. It was all about the numbers. Talk a little bit about the amount of discipline that the discipline, and not only that, the discipline that they held you to, but the self-discipline you built for yourself. Because I say one of the best things about being an entrepreneur is that you get to work for yourself. But one of the downfalls of being an entrepreneur is, can you keep your word to yourself? Talk a little bit about that.
Very, very accurate statement. The key thing is, I've always been in a unique situation professionally to be able to work regionally. So I had never really reported to an office except one time with Boston Pizza. And that was when I was in Dallas, Texas, but I was covering the West Coast. I had to really push to say, why am I in Dallas, Texas if I'm covering the West Coast? There's a restaurant right here. People are in town. Why do I have to schedule something 2 weeks out when I can meet them in 30 minutes? That makes no sense. That being said, the discipline that goes into being held accountable for those numbers, no matter hell or high water, no matter what happens, it just toughens you. It gives you the experience to look through the situation and be extremely efficient in your time management. It's like, look, I only have this many hours in the day. I'm going to be stuck in traffic for this long if I have to go out and visit people. And so I have to be efficient in my notes, my presentations, my ability to assess a situation, my ability to get the message across and be able to elicit some type of response, either yes or no, or we're going to continue this conversation. And then just be able to catalog that and move forward. But the key discipline is also being able to say, I have to have a slight balance of life, because if you get too bogged down in the business, you'll burn out really fast. And you have to recognize the company and the organization that you work for, and you have to have a plan. At the end of the day, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to get there real fast. And if you don't have a plan of what your goal is to reach in terms of sales, in terms of consultations, in terms of helping these businesses grow, then it's just a path for failure. I look at those things and what was instilled in me through obviously just the thrill and drive of winning and competing, and making sure that I hit that level of success, and more importantly, being able to have a slight balance too. When I was in the ascendant situation where it was a grindhouse, Monday in the office, on the road till Friday morning, and then call back, do all your reports. Saturday came, I was gone. You could not catch me. I was on the motorcycle, and I was living in Los Angeles. I was on the coast. You couldn't catch me till Monday morning. I was gone.
That's what you're supposed to.
Absolutely. And just having as much fun as I possibly could. So that being said, it made sense for me to start that way, because that level of success carried over to me being successful in business. Because at the end of the day, if you are accountable to yourself and you look at yourself in the mirror saying, I did everything I could, it just didn't happen. Maybe it's the wrong brand, but it's definitely not the wrong person.
Right. I love what you said about the fact that when Saturday came around, you couldn't be found. And I think, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, and we've all done it, starting businesses. I've been in business now. I'm very fortunate to celebrate I'm in my 30th year. I'm turning 50 this year, but I did make some of those mistakes. I made some of those mistakes early on where it was always about the grind. It was always about the numbers. It was always about that next award or that next pillar or platform, a plateau in the business. What was it that gave you the insight to break away? Because I think entrepreneurs, they somehow think that because they own the business, everything is up to them and it's 24/7, and today we have, unfortunately, a bad message of hustle and grind, which is, run, 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 run. What was it about that early stage when you were like, listen, I'm unplugging Saturday and Sunday? What was it about that?
The key thing for me is, if you continue the just grind, there's going to be a time where the machine might come to a screeching halt. And then what happens? You can't grind anymore. You have to have a balance. You have to have a mindset of, look, I'm not going to get stuck with the Sara Lee syndrome. And if you don't know what the Sara Lee syndrome is, nobody does it as good as Sara Lee, so nobody does it as good as me. So I have to do everything and control everything and no one can do it. I don't trust anybody. And until you delegate and you maybe subcontract out somebody to do something for you, there's only so many hours in a day. And if you get sick one day and you can't do anything, you're so behind the eight ball because you have to play catch up. And when you play catch up, the pressure goes on and you can't really grow your business. You're working in the business, not necessarily on it. And you have to be able to work on that business. That being said, I look at being able to have that cutoff time. It's like, look, you have to have a time on the day where you have to just recharge your battery. If it's going to the gym first thing in the morning or late in the evening or in the middle of the night, if it's meditation, if it's going to a church to be able to refill your spirit, if it's going to a massage just to be able to get the kinks out.
Amen to massage.
Absolutely. Having a cigar, which I do, and a nice libation of some sort with ice cubes or something of that nature. Or walk, who knows, whatever it is. But whatever you need to do, you have to have that balance to be able to walk away for a little bit of time and get some clarity, clear your head, and be able to look at or approach the business again the next day with the same level of veracity that you had, because you can't go at full throttle every single day nonstop and not have a little bit of a break just to reset. Even if you look like a NASCAR driver or, Formula One, they have to pit. They have to get to the pit and get some gas, get some fuel.
And what's interesting about that? You just brought this up, and you talk about NASCAR. I use NASCAR kind of as an analogy in some of my coaching, but to your point of the pit stop in auto racing, is the car doesn't necessarily need the pit stop at that moment. It's required for the longevity and the level of high performance required from the machine.
That's correct.
So it's necessary. You don't wait till the car breaks down. And so a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we unfortunately take our pit stops when we break down, which is not the right formula. So I love that you caught that early on, because again, I think it took me 6-7 years before I picked up on taking it down. And in the last decade, I put rest and restoration as the top priority. Running the business was a second. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's definitely that balance. I love that you brought that up. I want to ask you about mentorship, because you didn't luck on to this early mentorship like a lot of people, and I'm sure in your world you come across people like, Brian, can you mentor me on this or that? I get people that hit me up and say, hey, can you mentor me? I'm like, wait a minute. What did you do that caught the attention of this high-level executive that allowed you or afforded you the opportunity? What did you do? Because I like people to understand that luck isn't the way things happen. It's opportunity that you prepared yourself for. Talk a little bit about that if you can.
Well, I can say I've had a couple of great teachers in franchise. Another gentleman by the name of Gus DeMutzes was my boss at Sendit Corporation. He was the vice president of franchise development with the Jackson Hewitt chain, and he was very successful. But he had a mindset of, hey, you're grown. This is my expectation of you. I'm not going to hound you every day, but we'll have the calls on Monday, the calls on Friday. But this is my expectation, and I'm here to help you any way you can. But if you're not working, I'm not going to help you. If you're working, we'll figure it out. And what's your and then I'm like, okay. So and then all of a sudden, I had one season, I had one trip with the gentleman to to Kentucky, and it was a rough trip. Let's put it like this: it was a rough trip because the meetings I had, the people I had prepped, they weren't prepared. They're like, "What are you here for? What is this?" So it was like, "Oh," and he looked at me like, the only thing that saved you is the fact that you had Bruce Springsteen in the car radio right now. If you didn't, I would have rather wrote you up. So I had to go and travel with another director who was doing really well, and I picked up some pointers from him, and then I just scratched every plan that I had and took advantage of reworking my business plan, and then I killed it. And I had my first really big month where I was able to get some big sales on, and I was able to pay off all my student loans and all my debt in like 1 month. And I was like, wow, this makes sense. And I started making some really good money, and it was a lot of fun. So he was a great mentor with the expectation and setting the stage. With Jim Tree Living, obviously that's a different level of sophistication. I mean, that's a billionaire, and his level of expectation is a little different because you had a higher investment, and he's had a Canadian mindset, so as international business, and being able to see how he built it up from ground zero to a very successful chain, and more importantly, he was one of the original judges on what's called the Dragon's Den, which is the Canadian version and the predecessor of Shark Tank in America.
Okay.
So he was one of the judges on that, and you just being able to hear his pitches and then talk to him and see how he built the business. But in the organization at Boston's, and in franchising period, you're not going to see on the executive side too many men of color or black men, period. That's very rare. And in the sales capacity, it's even rarer. So I was one of the few, and that didn't stop me. I mean, I always thought of it, at the end of the day, give me an opportunity and I'll show you what I can do. So I was one of the top producers in the company, and he just took a liking to me because ex-athlete. I walked with a certain style. I always showed up in the office dressed to the nines, and he'd be like, "Where'd you get that suit?" It's like, "My tailor made it." "Oh, you're one of those guys, like custom." Because he was a tall 6'4" guy, I'm 6'3", and you start talking, fashion, and saying, "Oh, yeah, come on." And it was just a situation where I took advantage of that and just built a friendship with him. And he was very generous with his time when he came into the States, because he had the Canadian headquarters and then he had the U.S. headquarters. And he'd come to town and we'd say, and just start talking and laughing. He was a great guy, real good guy. And he started talking about business and helping him grow his brand. And I was like, I got to do my own thing. I mean, I love it. So he gave me some motivation, and he gave me some great insight on how to really treat people, because at the end of the day, he was one of the nicest men in business I've come across. A lot of fun, but he had expectations, but he was a great man, great guy.
Love it. So, gosh, you breeze through that. And I love talking to people like you because, you're running a race, you've massively successful, you've pivoted numerous times. Because I think about the conversation, you're like, hey, this guy said, I'm going to talk to you on Monday, I'm going to talk to you on Friday. But if you're not working, we're not going to, right? And then the second mentor is also giving you information that can take you to the next level and high expectations. But a lot of times, people don't realize that it's about what you do after you get the mentor's advice, right? It's what will you do when they invest in you? And it's just a great lesson. So for those listening, if a mentor is speaking into your life, do it.
Absolutely.
Do it. Because they don't have to. They don't, they don't have to do it.
And also do not have paralysis of analysis.
We could stay on that topic for years.
That is so true.
Perpetual planners,
Exactly. Well, it's like sometimes you just, I got done reading the book by Richard Branson, Finding My Virginity. And great, he's that's another person I would love to be able to have a conversation with.
Me too.
I really enjoy his mindset, and just being able to say, it's like, you know what, sometimes you just got to do it. You can plan and plan and plan, but nothing like putting your feet into the fire. And don't get me wrong, I had plans, and you better have a plan, but don't sit back and perfect the plan and not actually do anything.
Yeah, so it's funny. I've got an episode. I'll link it up in the show notes. It's called "Do the Reps." And it's my own mindset as I've developed the years. I don't have that shirt on today, but I do often wear it on shows. And it's available at the MindShiftStore.com. But it's like, listen, get to work. Put something in motion. And, everyone's worried about perfection and how they're going to be, how someone's going to view them or whatever. Like, listen, man, get it out there. Jim Collins said in his book, done is better than perfect, or done is the enemy of perfection is the enemy of done.
That's
I
correct.
think is what it is. And I'll have to link that up too, but great book. Take me back to two things are going on right now. I want to dive into,
Okay.
but I want you to bring me back to '08 and talk about the difficulties during, so you're in year one or two, and then
Which
I want us to
calendar year?
yeah, one calendar year, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then I want us to move forward, and I want you to compare and contrast what was going on in the economic cycle of '08, and you're in year one of your
Mm-hmm.
business, and then fast forward us to 2020, where we are right now, which we're now in another economic situation, although
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of a completely different environment. But compare and contrast those. Obviously, you're now 12 years, 13 years in the business, but take us back to what was going on, the shifts you had to make, your mindset at that time, how you dealt with adversity and the setbacks during '07, and then carry us forward to where you're at right now.
Okay. 2007 was a banner year. I did my first real big deal on the broker side. I did a 20-unit deal to bring Checkers and Rallies driving restaurants to Las Vegas, Nevada, and then I was able to do some other deals in some other areas, and I worked with some other chains. So at that time, I was restaurant heavy in my franchise portfolio. So I had concepts like Johnny Rockets and Checkers and Rallies driving restaurants, and Pollo Campero, which is a Guatemalan chicken chain, and then Baker Brothers sandwiches, and a few other Godfather's Pizza was another one. So it was restaurant heavy, which is great. The challenge in 2008 was, I just started my business. I was in the process of establishing corporate credit. I didn't want to, I had my LLC set up. Everything was good. Luckily I had a really incredible tax CPA that worked on my back end, which saved me some real headache. But everything that I put in place did not necessarily, all the plans I had did not really come to fruition for the fail-safes, because it was a world, economic crisis. I mean, if you have your investment portfolio with Lehman Brothers, obviously, and all the other people, they went bankrupt, and these are financial institutions. Like, what the heck is going on? So the challenge then was a lot of the financing that was all these deals were predicated on. Companies like GE Capital that just stopped their whole franchise finance division. They said, we're not funding anything. So it's like, you better have $2 million cash to do a
Right.
deal. And I'm like, wait a second, who's going to spend $2 million cash on something unless you're like a super billionaire? But why would you do that? Always let the money
Right.
work for you.
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opening experience, because at the end of the day, so many industries were really totally impacted by, the automobile industry was on the verge of collapse. The finance of franchises came to a screeching halt unless it was a lower level franchise. So it had to have highly cash liquid type of opportunities. And I had to learn to be exceptionally nimble, and I was. But at the end of the day, I also had more expenses than I needed at that time, based on the fact that I had a W-2, and I went through a W-2 to, obviously an employer's mindset. So obviously I had to reduce some expenditures. And, at the end of the day, a lot of lessons were learned at that one. Good ones and some bad ones. You make mistakes, but the most important thing is, don't be stuck on that mistake, or another way to put it, don't be stuck on stupid, and you can't get out of that situation.
I love it. I love it.
So I had learned it was an intense time frame, and then obviously living in a state like Las Vegas, and in the city of a city like Las Vegas in the state of Nevada, which is heavily predicated on tourism, the challenges were really, really significant.
Massive.
Yeah, so it was like, oh boy. So then it was very, very difficult to move forward at that particular time. Looking back, there's some things I could have done differently, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I know I had that mindset of work it, continue to drive through it, and just continue to re-identify opportunities and keep circling back with the ones that you think make sense. And more importantly, you got to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm done. I got to fire you. I can't work with you because you're taking up time. You don't want to be stuck in a situation with a client or a business that's like, as they call it, like an energy vampire, sucks the life out of you, sucks the energy out of you, and just takes your ability and doesn't do anything with it.
Right.
So,
And I'm gonna bring you up to today's opportunity, because you and I had an offline conversation a few weeks ago, and I want to bring us to that, and that is the massive opportunity for diversification for business owners, entrepreneurs, and investors out there. But what advice do you give people, or what advice have you taken or leaned on when the pressure really mounts in situations? And certainly '08 was catastrophic. It was certainly, but as over the 13 years you've been in this game, certainly you've had other pressure points. But talk a little bit about how you handle pressure when it actually hits you.
That's a great question. I had to really do a self-assessment, because I remember back, it was like 2009, 2010, and I was grinding really, really hard to make things happen, to the point where I got myself sick and gave myself a case of shingles because of the back and forth going up and down the freeway, trying to get, and I was, after that happened and that pain of shingles, of worrying, whoo!
I've heard it.
Yeah, that is you don't want to have that. That was something that I don't wish on anybody, but that let me realize I can't let this consume me to the point where it's going to affect my health, and I can't operate, I can't think, because my mindset at the time was grind. Guys, this is my first business. I can't be a success. I can't do anything. I'm not going to lose all this, blah, blah, blah. And then you realize, hey, guess what? I'm sick. My body broke down. And I was stressed to the highest level, and I couldn't get the things that I needed done because I was so focused on just survival mode at that point.
Right.
2000, fast forward to 2013, it's actually 2020, after being in the game 13 years. Yes, I see the stress that people are going through, but this is a situation with an economic shutdown that has to do with health. However, my mindset is totally different, because when you see closures that are coming up, with the closures of large box retail and some of the mom and pops that will not make it through this pandemic, you also have to see that there's going to be a lot of opportunity. You have to factor in that the landlords that were charging astronomical rates are going to have to come back to reality, because they're going to have vacancies. So this is probably one of the best times, if you're going to have a brick and mortar, to negotiate with the landlord, to be able to have a force majeure contracts in the terms of the lease, which is actually act of gods or situations that can prevent a situation like this for someone going bankrupt. Also, to make sure that you have the right lending organization behind you to be flexible and have the right concept. I look at it right now where, yes, it's a crazy situation, but the economy will come back, and it will. I mean, it's just temporary. It's not permanent. We've got the advances of the technology and medicine to placate that. Obviously, if situations arise where people who have lost the family members to it, my sympathies and my apologies, my sympathies to them for that situation. Is nothing to replace a family member. That being said, there are opportunities that will arise from this that people might not even realize. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at cleaning, sanitation, is going to be huge. It's a huge component moving forward. Like companies like Hoods or filtration companies and things of that nature, and they're just cleaning and is this going to be huge opportunities for those people to take advantage of that? And you have to be able to identify: do you want to continue to be furloughed? Do you have a position that is considered non-essential? And then all of a sudden, you put all this time for an organization in, and you realize that obviously, number one, you can't be replaced quickly, and you're not that important.
Isn't that interesting? It's funny you said that, right? So there's a lot of people that we depend on corporate America, we depend on our corporate jobs, we think of them as safe, stable environments. And the reality is you may not have done nothing wrong. In most cases, there are 40 million people at the time of recording this. I think the number was 40.9 million people are currently unemployed. That number will obviously rubber band a little bit backwards as the economy continues to open. My concern, though, at the time of recording this, is 40 million people are unemployed now, but with social distancing and some of the concerns with gatherings in public spaces, and that dynamic is companies and even large organizations may only reopen to a third capacity, maybe a half capacity. So we're still potentially looking at, a good upper, mid 20 to upper 20 number of millions of people that are immediately still for the next foreseeable future unemployed. And that may slowly digress down. My concern, to your point, is a lot of people now should have a wake-up call that is, the word essential versus non-essential. And I've said this on videos, I've said this in previous shows. We're not debating the title essential versus non-essential. We're saying, because essential means, hey, they're on the front line of the fight. So we want to give respect and honor to those people handling those issues. But how do you pivot? And that's what everyone should be thinking about. And so you're talking about franchise as an opportunity. And just like in '08, '09, and '10 in that recession, some of the biggest companies we know of today, Uber,
Mm-hmm.
Airbnb, we could go on. There are a number
Mm-hmm.
of fantastic companies
Mm-hmm.
that are Main Street today that
Absolutely.
were established during those years.
Absolutely.
If I'm gonna put you on the spot, if you so we're looking at, call it 40 million people that are unemployed, really talented people. Some of them have done really well financially and are not on the brink of economic collapse, and maybe they've thought about franchising. Maybe at some point they gave it a shot, but they put it on the back burner. But now maybe today they're open to it. Let's take them through a franchising 101 crash advisory course. How about that?
That's fantastic. Not a problem.
Okay, so
Okay.
pretend I'm that guy,
Okay.
and I'm sitting here thinking, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to go back, even if they call me back.
Okay. That's good.
I've got some assets. I've thought about it. Maybe now it's time for me to hang my own shingle. I don't know how many steps it is, but let's say there's 5 steps that we want to cover. Take me
Okay.
through step number 1. What should I be looking at?
The first step that you should do, and in my consultations with people that fit that criteria, is to have that frank conversation. Like, look, I need to have a very frank and candid conversation with you, and I need you to be boldly as honest as you can. It's like you're talking to your doctor, and more importantly, you're talking to your CPA. Okay. Or because at the end of the day, it has to be one of those frank conversations. The more information you give me about you, the better coach I can be for you. But if you're sitting back there looking on the peripheral, I can only do so much. But the more information you give me, the more targeted I can be with identifying the best opportunity for you. That being said, I'd have to get some initial information about where they are financially, their interest in life, what they want to do, and that's usually through what's called a confidential questionnaire. From that, you and I will have a detailed conversation off the information you provide me, and we're going to talk about your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, your expectations, where you want to be geographically, financially, your expectations, more importantly, where you want to be in 5 to 10 years. What's your goal to get there? And why are you looking right now? What's your level of comfort in your situation? And more importantly, what's your level of fear of the unknown? Are
Wow.
are you going to be considered someone who's like a pioneer, an explorer, or a settler? An explorer just charts the way, figures it out. The pioneer comes after the explorer and establishes systems. And then the settler just comes in after it's all been proven. Where are you? What type of person are you more specifically?
Wow.
And then factoring that in, we'll talk about, how you're going to finance this endeavor. Are you going to use your cash flow? Or are you going to do something called, are you going to use some of your assets that you have? You're going to do a HELOC. You can do that. Or would you do what's called a ROBS, a rollover for business startup for your 401k and your retirement accounts? So you can set up, and how you're going to set up your structure of your business. Is it going to be a LLC? Is it going to be a corporation, S Corp, C Corp, whatever? But don't do a sole proprietorship. Please don't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then talk about the finance, because introduction to finance partners, and also who's going to review the documents. Do you have a franchise attorney to be able to review the agreements before you sign it? And then we start talking about the concepts and the brands and things that make sense. I mean, that's really a Reader's Digest versions. There's so much more to that, but
Yeah,
those are some of the steps that you have to go through just on the basic level. I'm what's called a CFE, a Certified Franchise Executive, recognized by the International Franchise Association's Council of Franchise Executives. I got that designation in 2007. Actually, going into 2008, I actually got the official title, but I finished the documentation in 2007. And I was the first person of African-American descent to get it, number 5 in the world. And so that was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And that level of expertise and expectations, being able to have a set criteria that everyone has to agree to and have that last CFE designation after the name, means I'm pretty much an expert in the franchising field, and I've got credentials behind my name. So that being said, I also factor in as me personally is, how would I spend my money? I don't want to look at it as this is an investment that I feel comfortable with. These are brands that I truly have vetted, and it fits the criteria that you want to have. Because at the end of the day, if you have somebody who doesn't want to work nights and weekends, wants to be done at 5 o'clock, you definitely don't want to be in the restaurant industry. That's
Right.
a square peg in a
Right.
round hole. Nah,
Right.
you don't want to do that.
Right. Do you ever, and I'm sure it does come up, whether they want to be an owner above the business or an operator? How does that factor in? I mean, there's two distinctions between
Yeah,
ownership, right?
that is correct. You have owner operator, which is more like a smaller entity, like maybe one or two locations max, where the person works in the business as well. And then you have what's called area developers or master franchisees, where they would control a certain region or county or maybe even a state, and act as a sub franchisor of the major franchise chain. Well, they would do the recruitment of the individuals to come in, support them, train them, give a share of the royalty that is required for the operating system, spread with the corporate headquarters. So that basically means that that's like a mini franchise. That's the one for people who have that higher corporate structure. They can build teams and recruit, and it's a great wealth building strategy. I mean, franchising is a huge opportunity for people to build wealth if they follow the path that's laid in front of them with the franchise organization, and if it makes sense. I mean, and more importantly, it's replicatable and repeatable, and you have a higher resale value when it's time to exit the business because you have a defined territory, systems, operations. It's obviously regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and at the end of the day, getting into a business is a wonderful opportunity that makes sense, but being able to get out is also extremely important as well. What's your exit strategy?
Right, right. No, I love the way you cover that. It's like you said, owner operator versus, building businesses and building up an area or a territory. It's just, I've had some, with our digital marketing agency, we've had some opportunities to work with both franchisees and at the level of the franchisor. And it's definitely, and I worked for Taco Bell growing up, early years. And it was the only franchise here in the state of Nevada. Outside of the airport when the airport was granted a corporate facility, but learned a lot from inside that process. But yeah, it's very interesting. The opportunity today, though, as you're stating it, great time to pivot. Great opportunities are out there. Industries are blooming right now, even in the midst of this crazy crisis and situation. And it's about really, I like to, playing sports, played linebacker, we always had a phrase, keep your head on a swivel.
Absolutely.
And so today, if you have your head on the swivel where you're looking left and looking right, that means you're going to be able to see opportunities versus being tunnel visioned into, just going back to the real world that you used to live in. So as you mentioned, great wealth building opportunities. So I tell you what, I've got two questions for you as we wrap up the show. And we didn't talk about some of the big accomplishments, like you were just written up in a magazine a couple months ago. Just really quickly tell our audience about this recognition that you received in this magazine.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Actually, I was featured in the Franchise Journal. Great publication that started this year on the February edition for Black History Month. It's a titan of franchising. I've been in the franchise industry 21 years, and hundreds of individuals that I've touched through operations, but more specifically through franchise developments and sales and coaching and consulting. So I've placed hundreds of people in franchises over my career and learned a lot, received some designations like the CFE, and helped put that article together, and also some of the people that I touched along the way, I made sure that they were recognized as well. It was really cool. It was a great honor, and I was really pleased with the organization that I partnered with, the Franchise Consulting Company, a very good vehicle of highly professional consultants like myself, nationwide as well as international. And there's a certain level of expectation that we all adhere to. I was featured on it because I'm obviously a top broker with that organization, but more importantly, I've got a really good reputation in the franchising field. Never had a lawsuit, never been brought up over a lawsuit, because I operate in integrity, and my word is my bond, and your word is only as strong as how you back it. And at the end of the day, right, if you're throwing out garbage, it's going to come back to you. That boomerang effect is not forgiving in any industry, but especially franchising, because it's a small business opportunity and business network. Being able to pick up the phone and have conversations with the CEOs and presidents of these organizations, it's very real. I mean, with the exception of maybe one or two franchise chains that I really don't want to work with. The ones that are really hot, you can pick up and talk to the president real quickly. Talk to brokers like myself, because we help feed that business model. That's been a huge part of my life for the last 13 years as a business owner. And I value those opportunities and those connections. And I look forward to being able to do more press like that. That's fantastic. But more importantly, it shows that the diversity that's in the franchising world is very paramount. There's a lot of people who come into the industry with nothing, one location, and build it to several hundred. And they take the lessons learned, the opportunity to get mentorship through the IFA, through organizations, and keep it going, and more importantly, play it forward and give back. And that's huge.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I digress. I had one thought in my mind, and two things just popped up. Number one, you're a cigar connoisseur.
Absolutely.
Talk about what's your favorite cigar.
Ooh, I have to say it used to be the Aroma de Cuba El Jefe. It's a 60 gauge. I love that. That's my normal, just easy go smoke. But I have to say I love my my wonderful Cohibas that I got when I was in Havana, Cuba, back in January 2019, and I got a chance to go down there on a business trip, and it was absolutely fantastic. So my Cohibas from Havana are just absolutely my number one default. I love them, and that peppered with a nice caipirinha or an old fashioned. Is a wonderful, wonderful treat to be able to
look at you. Look at the smile on your face.
I'm just trying to tell you, you got to start talking my language, man.
Yeah. If you're listening on the podcast, you got to get over to YouTube and watch this on the YouTube. His face just lit up. Second love that I know you're passionate about is motorcycles. Tell us about your motorcycle.
I am been a rider for 18 years. And my motorcycle is the same one I have. The first one is still the one I have. We say 2002 Gilroy Indian Chief motorcycle, loaded up, 1683 cc's, 100 cubic inch engine, skirted fenders. That's very, very beautiful bike. And up and down the freeways, up and down the 15, up to Utah, down to Arizona, the 93 South, down to California, down into Mexico, all around the West Coast, but nothing beats going up the coast on the weekend with the ocean crashing on one side and the mountains on the other side, and the tunes blaring and the wind in your face.
I love it. So I used to have a bike and I had to give it up. I was encouraged to. So, but I'm with you. I'm with you up the coast, except I'll just go ahead and take it with the chop top. So. That's
nice. We'll take the top.
Yeah, we'll take the top. We'll take the top down and make it happen. So it's all good.
Understood. Listen, it's understood.
Last big question for you, man. If it was all over today, you woke up, you didn't wake up tomorrow for whatever reason, what would you want the world to know Brian Pearson by?
Brian Pearson is a man of his word. His integrity. He'll work with you. He's a great son, great brother, good fraternity brother, entrepreneur. Good friend, very legitimate in his field, takes pride in helping people, and more importantly, if you want to have a good time and a good meal, there's nobody better.
I love it. We didn't say this at the beginning of the show, but Brian and I are fraternity brothers of the great Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. My man, yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking time to be on the show, Brian. Always good. Pleasure. Thank you for your expertise and your dedication to the industry and the craft and essentially helping businesses create wealth through business opportunities. Continue blessings to you in your career, man. I know you for a guy who is exactly what you just said. I mean, from the day we've met, I know you are about your systems and your processes. And now I've got even better backstory for those early years when you were coached by the gentleman who said, I'm going to call you on Monday. I'm going to call you on Friday.
Make it work in between.
I love it. I love it, man. It's just that discipline, man. Again, shout out to you again, my brother. And thanks for taking time to be on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it. And everybody, please listen to this wonderful MindShift podcast. I tell you, I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed working with you on this one. This is great.
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure. By the way, real quick, where would you want people to connect with you?
If you want to connect with me, there's two ways that you can go to my website, which is www.invictus.com, I'm on LinkedIn if you need to go on LinkedIn at Brian Pearson with Invictus Dove Group. And also, if you want to, you can go to the Franchise Consulting Company. As it's spelled, Franchise Consulting Company, and look at consultants and go to B. Pearson, Brian Pearson. That's another way to reach me as well. And the phone number is area code 213-254-0521. Either way, I'll reach you.
I love it, man. Thanks again for being on the show, Brian.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you so much.